Looking back at the 1970s, we often get lost in an aesthetic nostalgia of vibrant colors and iconic music, but rarely do we analyze the psychological laboratory that era represented for those who grew up during that period. The mental architecture wasn't built within structured classrooms or under the constant surveillance of security algorithms. On the contrary, the foundation of this generation's personality was forged in an environment of unsupervised freedom, which today we could almost classify as cognitive survival training. This absence of omnipresent parental monitoring wasn't a sign of neglect, but rather an empty space where the child's brain was forced to expand, creating a unique form of resilience that defines the behavior of these adults to this day in their careers and personal lives. Modern neuroscience offers us a fascinating lens to understand what happened in those afternoons of endless GPS free play. Unlike the contemporary belief that absolute protection and a packed schedule produce better prepared children, the unstructured play of the 70s functioned as a powerful catalyst for when a child leaves home without a set destination and without adult supervision to mediate each interaction, the prefrontal cortex is intensely activated for real-time processing. These children's brains were literally reconfigured for innovation, as the lack of external instructions required them to create their own rules, mental maps, and solutions to the geographical and social challenges that spontaneously arose along their paths. Within this scenario of autonomy, a fundamental psychological concept began to crystallize: the internal locus of control. This term refers to the deep belief that the individual has agency over the events of their life, as opposed to an external locus of control where fate or others are blamed. In the 1970s, when a toy broke or a bicycle tire went flat far from home, there was no immediate technical support, or a parent just a click away. The child was forced to confront the object and the situation on their own. This repetitive exercise of cause and effect taught this generation that their actions directly influence their results, developing a proactive mindset that prioritizes the question, what can I do now, instead of seeking external culprits for their frustrations. This ability to take responsibility for their own circumstances has produced adults who operate under a very robust logic of emotional self-sufficiency. Instead of freezing in the face of an obstacle, these people tend to analyze the available tools and improvise solutions with what they have at hand. It is the psychology of practical maintenance applied to emotional and professional life. By learning early on that the solution to a fight with a friend or a scraped knee depended mainly on their own attitude and resilience, they built a psychological foundation where victimization rarely finds space. This trait is one of the hallmarks of the resilience of the 1970s, allowing them to navigate crises with an analytical calm that seems to be lacking in subsequent generations, more accustomed to immediate external support. Another essential pillar of this development was what we might call the alchemy of boredom back then. Boredom wasn't seen as a medical emergency or a flaw in the entertainment system that needed to be instantly fixed by a screen. On the contrary, boredom was the baseline state where imagination was forced to flourish without the bombardment of constant stimuli and cheap dopamine that social media offers today. The brains of these children developed an extraordinary tolerance for emptiness and the absence of stimuli. This ability to endure nothingness transformed in adulthood into a superior skill of concentration and the capacity to tolerate discomfort and uncertainty without resorting to compulsive escape mechanisms or generalized anxiety in the face of a lack of immediate feedback. The innovation that arises from boredom is profound because it is not reactive, but creative. Those who grew up needing to invent games with sticks or stones developed lateral thinking that is highly valued in today's job market. More than that, this coexistence with silence and with their own minds allowed for the development of healthy introspection. They learned that the discomfort of having nothing to do is, in fact, an invitation to internal and external exploration. This psychological resistance to instant gratification is what allows these individuals to maintain focus on long-term projects, enduring the monotonous phases of any growth process with a patience that has become an absolute rarity in the hyperstimulated digital world. Risk calibration is another vital skill acquired through direct and often painful physical experience. By climbing tall trees or going down hills in go-karts without any protective equipment, these children were conducting constant experiments in physics and biology. They didn't read about gravity or danger in manuals. They felt the impact of the fall and the limits of their own bodies. This visceral contact with physical reality allowed for the development of an extremely precise internal risk assessment system. They learned to clearly discern the difference between what is merely frightening, like darkness, or a strange noise, and what is truly dangerous, like an unstable structure or excessive height. This practical wisdom is radically different from the theoretical knowledge offered by warnings and safety signs. While the current generation is often kept in a protective bubble that prevents error, the generation of the 70s used error as its main teacher. This experience shaped adults who possess calculated courage. They don't avoid risk out of irrational fear, but face it knowing exactly what the consequences are and how to mitigate them. There is a fundamental confidence born from having survived small dangers in childhood, a sense of competence that no self-help course can replicate. As it is rooted in muscle memory and overcoming real physical limits during the formative years of personality and character. If you identify with what's being said here, share your story in the comments or leave a like and subscribe. This connection to practical reality leads us to the development of an emotional and social intelligence that we could call root without adult mediators or teachers to resolve every little dispute in the playground or on the street. Children of the 70s had to become experts in diplomacy and conflict resolution. They learned to read subtext, interpret body language, and understand the complex power dynamics within a peer group. If you didn't know how to negotiate, you were out of the game. This need for forced social adaptation created a heightened sensitivity to the nuances of human relationships that today's screens tend to flatten or oversimplify. The social intelligence developed in this environment is empathetic and analytical at the same time. Learning to sit with your emotions was a direct consequence of living in a world with fewer distractions and more waiting. If you missed an episode of your favorite series, or if a friend moved away, you had to process that frustration and sadness without the immediate relief of a new digital stimulus. This practice of delayed gratification, waiting a whole week for a TV show or months to save up for a record, strengthened the muscle of emotional resilience. These adults are able to deal with denial and waiting time in a much more balanced way, understanding that the value of things often lies in the patience invested in achieving them. Observing these traits, we realize that resilience is not an innate gift, but a behavioral design sculpted by circumstances. The unsupervised freedom of the 1970s, although viewed today with some apprehension due to excessive security, provided the mental tools for a stable and creative adult life. The contemporary challenge is how to reclaim these elements such as productive boredom, calculated risk, and direct social negotiation in a world that tries to eliminate all discomfort. By understanding the psychology behind this decade, we can try to reintegrate these principles into our own pursuit of personal development, remembering that true strength of character often arises from the space where no one is watching and where we are forced to be our own guides and protectors. This analysis invites us to reflect on how we are shaping our own minds and the minds of future generations. Our excessive conveniences and constant monitoring atrophying the skills that make us resilient humans. The psychology of the 1970s teaches us that friction with reality is what gives us traction to move forward. Valuing boredom as a cradle of ideas and error as a teacher of practical wisdom is not a step backward, but a necessary return to the roots of what it means to be psychologically strong. Maybe take this resilience design beyond nostalgia, applying its logic of internal locus of control and emotional intelligence to every challenge that the modern world, with all its complexities and constant pressures, presents to us daily. At the end of this journey, I invite you to observe your own trajectory and realize where your freedom and your solitary challenges have shaped who you are today. Resilience is a continuous process of adaptation and inner strength. That way, I'll know you're enjoying the content. We hope these insights have brought a new perspective on the importance of facing discomfort and cultivating emotional autonomy in your daily life. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. We greatly value your presence and engagement in this community focused on growth and in-depth analysis of human behavior. Leave your ideas in the comments about what we can cover on the channel. Until our next meeting, to explore more about the mysteries of the mind and personal development,